Pure Reflections PR401. This is a 2K high build. Now it is a DTS, which is direct to substrate. There's your hardener right there, in case you want a nice shot of a clean label that don't have primer all over it. So I tried this before, and I can't remember if I talked about it too much or not, but I never really put this through an extreme test. So I guess you can call this a mini review. It is what it is. So let me show you what we've done. We're working on this. This is the 68 Firebird. We don't need to look at that. So what we've done, basically we shot these pieces. There was some metal showing through and a little bit of that. So we hit a few spots with some etch primer, just where the bare metal was showing. Now, it is a DTS, but when you read the label on the back or the TDS sheet, it will go over bare metal. They just don't recommend it as a metal sealer or a direct-to-metal product. So if you break through, they say it's okay. Now, that being said, I shot a little bit of one step on it, which, just enough to etch a little bit of the metal, just enough to give it a little bit of bite, let that dry, and then we shot this on. So what we did, it's really hard to get up in these places here. So we went in here, and as you can see, they still got to be sanded out because it's nice and shiny in there. And I wasn't quite done sanding, but basically you can see where it's shiny there. But anyway, to get the stuff in here and fix this up, there's a tool I have that spins, and you put little pieces of paper in it, and it eats all the stuff out and cleans it up. So to get primer in there, we put a bit of the one shot where the metal was, or the one step, I should say. And then after that, we basically, the whole thing had to be done, right? And this is a 2K product that goes on. So what I can say is it went on nice, and we were able to sand it. But trying to get stuff in here, I ended up putting too much on. I don't know if you can see right here. There's like a sag right here. But this came up real high. We took a 3-inch on a sander with some 120. No, sorry, with some 320. And then we sanded that off. I got to sand a little more here. And the other thing that happened is this one did the same thing when I came around the side and I hit the vents and stuff. We had a great big gob of it here. It was super thick. So it's the next day, and you can see that little line there, but you can't feel anything. There was a dent there, and it filled it. But there was a big gob up in here. It might have been closer to here. But anyway, it sanded right off. So this stuff, I gotta say, I didn't think it would do a high build very well. The stuff I like to use, the CRE321, is an epoxy primer that is sandable. Now, you got to use a 1.8, I think, to a 2.0 or a 2.2 tip, but I know I use a 1.8 all the time. You can go bigger, and it goes on thick and fat. It's also a little bumpy. Doesn't sand particularly easy. You got to almost scuff it first, and once you get the shine off, it'll buff out. But it does really good work, and you can kind of control what you're doing. And once it's done and it's cleaned, it can be painted over. This stuff, you can't use it like a sealer. It seems to indicate that it must be sanded, which is fine. It's a primer. This requires a 1.4 tip, so not real thick. And one thing, and I didn't get a chance to use it a whole lot. I used it on a few little things, and the reason why, I was going to open it, but I'm not going to open it. When you open this and you stir it up, it has the consistency of milk. Very runny looking stuff. You pour this in, and I mean it's thick, it's a hardener, so it's thick, but when you pour it in, I don't know if we got anything in there, probably not. But anyway, when you pour it in, it doesn't really thicken it up. However, when you mix it all up, give it about a minute or two and it starts to kind of thicken. Now, it's still pretty runny, and you pour it out of the cup into your gun and it fires on. And I mean, it seems to go on okay, but you do a coat and another coat. And I mean, you can do a coat back to back. Should there be flash time? Probably. I'm just going to tell you what I did with it. I fired a coat on, did all my other parts, came back, did another coat right away. And like I say, because I did the vents, I basically shot, how would I explain that? on an angle this way to get those edges, and then this way to get those edges. And then we did the whole thing. Now I had to come up close and I tried to blast a bit in here like when you'd paint, but enough of it come out of my gun, and I was shooting it, gosh, I had 60 on the wall over at the compressor. So here in the booth, we only had it at wherever it happened to be. It was pretty much wide open throttle with a little bit turned in. So we were shooting it on fast, but it went smooth. Here's a good example of that. I sanded this real quick by hand. This is the spoiler off the back of the trunk lid. I mean, it was shiny. It was so perfect here. And of course, I have a few breakthroughs into the white paint. You can paint over that. That's fine. We're painting that right as it is. It's all sanded. It was smooth, and I was able to do it by hand. And I mean, there was some little bumps and bruises and scratches, and I thought, well, let's try it and see. So that got a couple coats and extra. It was on there pretty heavy. This got one coat. Did I do this a second time? It may have got 2 coats, but it was basically just put on like paint and not real thick. Trunk lid also got 2 coats. I'd say medium wet coats. We were able to sand and block everything out, and it turned out good. You can see a little bit here, but we don't care. That's under the spoiler, so we're done. I think the way I used it when I tried it the first time, and I didn't give it much of a chance. So I said it. I probably said something along the lines of, that seems okay. You can use it, but you know, it is what it is. On this stuff, there was a lot of sand scratching still in the trunk lid, and I thought, well, let's try it. So I did the spoiler, 2 coats, but they were pretty thin. 2 full wet coats on the trunk lid, and it blocked out nice. Probably 2 full wet coats on here, plus a little extra because you're trying to get in all the little crevices and make sure it's all primed, because you don't want no metal showing nowhere, just in case you missed it. So let me take you to this. If you've been watching my videos, you've seen that this hood super sucked. It's a Dynacorn aftermarket Pontiac 400 hood, and it had damage that had been fixed, used on a car, taken off the car, and then they put a Trans Am, some other hood on the car. Anyway, doesn't matter what the story is. It was a hood that was all damaged and banged up, and basically it came to us. Now, when I was done the body work on this, just to get it straight enough to deem it usable, it was bad. And when I say bad, it had sand scratches galore. So this got 4 coats of that primer, and it was thick, nasty coats. And I didn't really give it a lot of dry time in between. It doesn't seem like you have to, which, you know, is pretty good. Now, the only reason I shot the hood with this, I was going to do this with my CRE 321, and the only reason I shot it with this is because I had paint mixed and I did those other parts. So what happened is I wanted to do a full wet coat on this. Now, as you can see, even dry the next day, there's still quite a sheen to it. But when this was wet, it stayed shiny for a good hour. And what I was able to do was soak the whole hood down, sand scratches and all, because I mean, this was blocked with all 80 and whatnot, and there was some hard 80 grit scratching in it. And I thought, I got this out, I'm going to shoot it to see what it looks like. Well, I decided that it was flat enough that I'm happy with it. There might be a few little spots to touch up, but all in all, it was straight, it was usable, the peak is good. So the body work that was done to this is fairly on point. You can see that comes up a little bit high, but that's where it's going to sit. But they're both exactly the same. We're leaving them alone. We're not going to worry about that. And I shouldn't have sanded it before doing this video, because you can see here, this I might have to fill. But I was working on this side. You can see here I broke through a little bit, so we'll stop there. And I mean, this was sanded really, really rough. You can see little low spots in it. That's gone enough as far as I'm concerned. This primer If you're not afraid to shoot it on, it's deceiving because it doesn't look like it's going on that thick. That side was one thing, and this side was terrible. It didn't quite get this, but perhaps I'm not done sanding. And obviously I didn't sand up in there. Now we did bodywork these quite a bit smoother, but at the very, very last go, just trying to kind of get all the little spots nice. Right in this area on both hoods, got one more coat, and then I blocked it pretty rough to get it straight and flat. Well, the shape you want. And basically, I mean, I'm really impressed with this primer. I gotta say, it is what it is, and it's not the ultimate thing for every job. But the fact that I could, and what I did after I made this wet, I went ahead and did a second coat, and I ran out of primer. So what I did is I mixed a little bit more. So there was about a coat and a half on this, right? I mixed a bit more, and I put 2 more coats on, full wet coats. And this whole surface was 80 grit sand scratching in various ways. And as you can see, I forgot to bring the little broom with me. Yeah, so I can't even feel that, even though I can feel it a little bit. I might have to block this right here a little bit more. But it's smooth. Like it's pretty good. I mean, I could add a little bit more in here, but again, I can block that more. We're not down to the white or anywhere near it. I got a bit of white showing here, so we'll stop. So yes, we're not going to know if that's a little bit of the white paint, and I don't think it is because of the area. That's probably a little bit of filler in there showing. That's a little bit of white paint. Now that being said, we blocked all this, and I'm blocking this off with 120. So we're going to have to go over this again, you know, and sand it down. However, this is almost nice enough now that you could pretty much seal it. We still got to go over this edge here, but as you can see, there's no highs or lows or anything like that. Like, it worked pretty good. And I didn't do the whole thing. I spent like 2 minutes taking this down. Like, I was shocked how well it went. And I should have actually set the camera up and videotaped it, because I'm pretty sure that you would not believe how bad the sand scratches in this were. And even painted, you could see them. And as soon as I sanded them, it's almost like they disappeared. So let's do that. Let's set the camera up just to give you some idea how long this takes. Or let's see. Alrighty, so we're still going strong. So I did the worst of it already, which is too bad, because I really should have shown this. I was actually surprised. And the reason why, the price for this primer versus some of the primers I like to use, it's like less than half. So this stuff, I mean, it's cheap. It is what it is if you need a bit of high build. Now, if my bodywork on this hood, if I would have taken it one step further, you know, and sanded it a little more, the thing is, you want to stop where it's straight, and this hood had severe damage. Now, that being said, even if I got to prime this one more time and give it a light going over, I mean, this stuff is pretty impressive. So this is 120. You probably don't want to go this rough most of the time, but, well, we're still blocking, right? I just don't want to go as crazy as 80 and create what we're trying to fix. And I'm not going real aggressive because we don't have to. Also because of where we're sanding, so I'm probably going to come in here with the round block and get those. I want to make sure. It took a long time to get that crown on the hood nice and decent, so we don't want to mess that up. as damaged as this hood is, and I mean it's really something, there wasn't too much filler in it, considering. I mean, you use a lot of filler, but if you do it right, most of it should end up on the floor. Got a little bit of a low right there. I'm not even putting the weight of my arms on it. We're going real light, so the edges don't touch, because we don't want to, you know, if you see a spot and you try to get it out, no, you want to just go over flat so that everything ends up, and again, like I've got a lot of primer on this, and it should be enough to flatten that right out. Just want to make sure you can see that spot. It's right here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it back here a little bit. Because the idea is we don't want it to dip. But we've concentrated a lot here and here. So now I'm going to concentrate back here. And when we come back up here, that'll flow so even. The idea is that you make it go a way that it can't be seen. Like when in doubt, I know the car will be white, so technically right now you could go over it, no one would ever know. But let's imagine the car was going to be black. Now, if this car truly was going to be black, I would probably do another 2 coats of primer, you know, and go over all this again. Now, if you look down the hood, I think you can see here, here, and here. Those dark spots aren't quite through. And we don't want to push too much on the ends, so we want to get it to where the ends are just floating. And the hood goes this way, so they should always float. Sometimes it'd be nice if this handle was like this one, but I'm barely holding on to it. And we've already blocked this with like super coarse 80 grit, so 40 and then 80. So this 120 is just working the primer. In case people go, oh, it won't be flat because, you know, you're not using a tough enough grit. There's a little bit right here. I can barely pick it up with the camera. There's a little bit there, but let me put it this way. Gone. This one's gone. And I'm trying to come right up near the edge, but not rub the edge off. And I'm pushing here, not up there. We might not get this one out. We did get the rest out. There's a dark spot right here, and it's not much, but we're going to have to fill that. And the reason why I say that is because if we keep going, because it's going to become too high here. Wow. Might just grab a piece and sand that off by hand. It's so minimal, so I'm not even going to worry about that. Now keep in mind, once we block the whole hood, there's going to be a couple of spots. For instance, I showed you up here this deeper scratching. I'm going to give this a little more sanding, and if it don't come out, we might have to either fill it or reprime it. And if we're going to do that, we can prime this area. We can also prime that low spot, and then over there, there's a couple spots we're going to prime as well. Because here we have where the Bondo spreader went a little too low here. And there's a bit of, mind you here, I think that'll sand out. We'll try, but if not, we can prime this area, put 2 fat coats on there, put a little bit down the middle here. And I mean, you got to bleed it out a little bit, right? Blend it out a bit and then sand it back in. But look, this was like a lot cheaper than the better stuff I used. Now the better stuff I used, I could have done 2 real fat coats or 3 medium coats, blocked it once. It's harder to sand, harder to block. I'd still be doing it and we wouldn't be anywhere near done. But when you're done, it'll do more and it's good. But all in all, if you're looking for a cheap high build that seems to be okay, this seems to be okay. And I mean, what I've shown you is not the be-all, end-all of everything on this product. You got to consider shrinkage and different things, right, as time goes on. The guy that I get all my paint supplies from, he's used this and he told me, he says, honestly, he goes, it does shrink in the cup a little bit and whatnot, but not as much as you'd think. So I don't know if you can tell, but that's from yesterday, and the paint has even cracked away from the bottom of the cup, even where it's deep. You know, you can see a little bit of funniness at the top where the thick stuff must have shrank some, but it didn't seem to shrink down in the edges. And I mean, I'm sure it'll shrink a little further. You know, I'd wait another day or 2 at least, but how much will it shrink? And here's the reality as far as I'm concerned. We're cutting through, and it didn't take long to get that. There's not so much on here that the shrinking is going to make that much of a difference at this point. I'm not saying to do a whole bunch of layers and go crazy with it, but I'm impressed that it could do this work. I knew it could work on those parts. I was pretty confident with that, but this was a bit of a stretch. And like I say, I threw some on to see what was flat, and then I basically did another coat. So it was about 1.5 coats. And they weren't real thick coats. But when I realized that it seemed to be almost hiding it, I mixed up a little more, hence the second cup here. And we did 2 full wet coats on just the hood on top of what we'd already done. And that literally buried most of it. Like you could still see it, but it didn't look like sand scratching. It just was like little lines in the film. And I knew as soon as I saw that, I was pretty sure that would block out. There's a little bit of a low there. So yeah, this hood was really, really bad, and I got to be honest, I'm going to have to go around. There's a couple little spots we're going to have to touch up and fix up, whether we use filler or just a little more primer or whatever. The body line down the middle looks pretty good. There's a bit of a squiggle there, but I mean, that could just be... Here, let's fix it. Yeah, we're good. I'm happy with that. Once we do the other side and you get a bit of film build with the 2 decent coats of paint on this, that's going to be, it's going to be solid. It's going to be a nice looking car. There's no doubt about that in my mind. So we're pretty pleased at this point with where this is going. So Pure Reflections, I mean, not dirt cheap, but definitely not expensive. PR401, PR405 hardener, high build, something 2K, DTS. I think it's like 2 point something, low VOCs. But anyway, this is what it is, and it works. And it sands easy. So what I'm saying about that is this is kind of a place where you save money. It's not just that the product was inexpensive. It sands fast. Time is money. That's the reality. So if you're making any kind of money at this, you want to save a little bit, this stuff is pretty good. And like I said, I should have almost done a little more work to the hood to make it a little better, and this would have worked 100% the first go. It worked on everything else. The car's pretty clean, and we were treating it as a repaint, but that stuff works so good, I'm almost tempted to give the whole car one coat just to see what it would do, but we're not going to do that. All we're going to do to this, there's a few places where we're going to touch it up and refine it, and we're just going to seal it and paint it because the car's at sealer levels, so we're not going to go too crazy with it. It's already been body work to the point of very smooth. Anyway, I'm going to give the Pure Reflections PR401 high build DTS primer 2 thumbs up. Cheers. Thanks for watching.